Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of teissTalk with me, your host, Jenny Radcliffe. Today's show is all about security assurance and identifying those gaps in our security controls. It's a great show, and we've got a great panel. I'm going to be joined by three guests to discuss both our news item and today's topic. We are joined by teissTalk friend and show regular, the Professor Danny Dresner. We're also joined by Dr. Veselin Monev, who is Information Security Officer at Pilatus Aircraft Limited, and Fritz Jean-Louis, who's the CISO at the Globe and Mail Centre. So I'm going to ask them to join me in just a second. But firstly, I want to say welcome to all our Tuesday teissTalkers. I can see you all in the audience. How are we all doing today? It's nice to see you all. And just to say that we have a very special question today, because I thought that much as we love our teissTalk mugs, we might introduce something else. So the question today, and the poll will go up very shortly while our Teiss Hunter is writing it, is would you rather have a teissTalk mug or a teissTalk dinosaur? Do let us know and give me some names for this dinosaur in the chat. What type of Asaurus might it be? So today we are going to be joined by Professor Danny Dresner, Veselin Monev, and Fritz Jean-Louis. So if I could ask you to join the platform, gentlemen. And oh yes, it's not. Thank you, Lee Morton. I've just realised I'm Thursday teissTalk this week. I'm normally Tuesday teissTalk. I'm standing in for our Thursday fella, which is Jeff White. So Thursday teissTalkers. Welcome, gentlemen, to the platform. How are we all doing today?
Doing great, thank you.
So it is lovely to have you all on the show. So we're going to be talking security assurance very shortly. But before we do that, we've got a little article to look over. And the article is interesting to me because it's about bad guys doing bad guy things. Our article today is about the Evil Core hacker group changing their ransomware tactics to evade US sanctions. It appeared quite recently in the Information Security magazine. And basically, the long and short of it is, and I'll ask for your opinions on this in a minute, gentlemen, is that Evil Core switched firstly from Wasted Locker to Hades to evade sanctions imposed on the UNC 2165 threat cluster to hide their identity so the victims can still pay them. And then they switched and they started using other methods as well. Bad guys doing bad guy things, Professor Danny.
No, they're bad guys, but they're actually doing good guy things. They're helping poor victims not to stay on the right side of the law. They're actually offering an additional service that not only are we going to fleece you, we're going to make sure that you're going to be out of jail, still unfined or whatever the sanctions might be, so that we can come around and fleece you again. So they're not doing it for altruistic reasons, but I'm sure as Liberace would have said, I'm sure they cry all the way to the bank. It's this really weird thing, isn't it? That we stick to regulations and are very careful to do so. I think there are more lawyers at GCHQ than anything else. But the criminals, of course, are there to ride roughshod through it all.
Yeah, I mean, what did you think, Dr. Veselin? I mean, what did you think about this? Does it show significant evolution on the part of threat actors, do you think?
Well, definitely. I mean, usually what we see is that a malware gets changed just to be more effective. So the idea is they compromise security control so they reach their target. But in this case, they change it for a completely other reason. They just want, for the victims to pay the ransomware. So the reasons change, not just the code. They adjust the code for this particular reason to make sure that they get the ransom from as many companies as possible.
What did you think, Fritz? Did you think this was significant? Did you think that shifting the emphasis sort of to the victims was a good move?
Yes, as an information security professional, it's interesting to me that the folks that I have against me, right, or against my organizations, are folks that are running a business. They are adapting, they are evolving to the situation, they're trying to understand. And that's what's fascinating about this is for a while, ransomware was pretty a steady sort of an attack vector. And as an information security professional, okay, if I disrupt this attack vector at a key point, then I ought to be okay. I have multiple chances to disrupt that attack. But now with the ever-changing tactics and techniques that they're using, it's a much more agile adversary. So it does create some interesting challenges for us in information security.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered about it. I thought, I mean, I agree. I think it shows clever thinking, quick thinking. It's something that we always say on the show, as if only that clever thinking and quick thinking was applied for good reasons, what these people could do. Do you think it indicates that sanctions are at least somewhat working? Let's go back to the prof. Do you think that's what it indicates? That they're having to move to avoid them?
I think, I mean, there are lots of different areas where the sanctions apply, but the opportunity for them to be agile in this respect, and the fact that there are so many kind of criminal activities as a service means that people can move around. They may lose a cut of things until they work things out, and of course, people might be trying. I mean, what I think this might beg the question is: this now the time to make paying any ransomware illegal?
Yeah, I don't know about that, because I think it just drives it underground. I mean, Vesalin, what do you think about that? I think that if we say paying the ransoms illegal, we're going to make the victims of the attack into criminals, and people find a way around it.
Well, it's a difficult question, because in some companies it might mean, surviving, just not getting bankrupt. So it's a hard question. So yes, we have to comply with the laws, but at the end, it's there's so many dependencies we need to consider. And in this particular case, it seems that it's working. I mean, when the criminal actors try to change the code for this particular reason, I mean, that means their own perception is that, this is going to affect their business, so they need to adjust their business operations.
Absolutely. And it is a business, and the harder we make it for them to do business, I suppose, the better. But we've got just a couple of comments here, and we've got one from Alan saying, well, desperation drives innovation, suggests that US, UK, EU sanctions might be having an effect, and that's what we've got. But then he also adds, beware backlash from bad actors. If they can't extract money with menaces, they'll resort to something more impactful. And then we're just going to see ransomware just evolving and keeping moving. And really that kind of ties in with today's topic, which we'll get onto in just a minute. But don't forget to ask any questions for our panel on ransomware or on today's topic of security assurance. And best questions will win a teissTalk mug, but also potentially a teissTalk dinosaur. If our poll shows that most of you would like to receive a teissTalk dinosaur, then we might consider sending one out in future if we can name one appropriately. We've got lots of comments coming up. I will come back to the comments very shortly. Some from Steve and from Diana. Welcome to this show. So let's have a little look then at today's overall topic, because it does sort of tie in with our sort of threat modeling and threat landscape and everything else, which is security assurance. Now, this is a topic that I struggle sometimes, because for me, it can be quite dry. Is it a dry topic, Danny?
No, I think people say that, and they try to make it that way as a way to try and divert people from the subject. Okay. Because, naturally, nobody likes to be checked up on. Nobody likes to have any of their vulnerabilities revealed. So why not put down the topic in the first place? So I think there's a big issue there. Also, it's oh God, we're so exhausted from doing all the security stuff. The last thing we want is now to actually present that in some sort of audit. But actually, it really is. I mean, it's got the potential to be the next generation of security, where all of these sort of, I suppose, almost after the fact, where everything's set up and checks are made, that we're actually living and understanding our state of security at any one time, rather than just, okay, we'll set this up, let's get the pen testers in to see if they can knock it down, we'll get the auditors in to see what problems they find. And more often not, people are doing that from the point of view of saying, oh, well, I can't be bothered to check it myself. Tell you what, and I don't even know what I should be doing. Let's get some experts in to tell us where we're going wrong. So the entire 27001 type of security environment is really based around sticking plasters and not by design.
Well, I mean, it's certainly a dynamic environment that we're talking about. That must keep it somewhat exciting. It's certainly ever changing. Would you agree with that, Dr. Vessalin?
Well, I think many things change, but some remain constant. So what remains constant is, some people their perception is going to be that security is a burden and things they just don't want to deal with. And others will embrace it, especially environments that have a very healthy security culture, which means, they might proactively ask you about, what is our current processes in regards to specific topics. So it depends on the company and the security culture.
Fritz?
I think for me is even unless you're in business and you have no clients, no customers, right? Because the entire concept of security assurance is providing some assurances to your clients that you're operating on some reasonable level of maturity from a security control perspective. So I don't even think anymore that the discussion should be on whether or not I do this. It should be a matter of when do I do this, especially if I want to stay competitive in the market. So as boring as some people may want to think of it, in my opinion, and I've seen it work, where shortly after achieving the SOC 2 Type 2, a company was able to grow an additional 50% by being able to attract some additional government type client. So I think it's a strategic advantage, rather whether dry or not, it's a strategic advantage, and you have the option resist, which is futile, or because it is at some point either the ransomware group is going to make you regret, or your clients is going to force you down a path that you don't necessarily. So why not do security by design?
Right.
Get it out of the way, set it up from the get-go in a way that is secure, effective, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. But I may be biased.
I mean, I'm getting some great comments in here. We've got one from Mark saying, lots from Mark. Regular control orders, if you don't test, how do you know they're effective? Instance, give a hint there are problems with controls. Automation is best if possible, and human sampling for substantive audits can take too long compared to automated control testing. These are good comments. Also, Alan, continuous control monitoring rather than annual audit is the future direction. That was what I was thinking as well. It's like it's a constant process now. The way the threatscape changes and everything, isn't it? It's not. We can never be stagnant.
I think the key word I think we're probably looking for is integration. It's not okay. Let's set up. Okay, we'll have an audit every 6 months or whatever. It's the SOC working with the auditors, or the auditors working in the SOC. So these things aren't just kind of a timed and scheduled thing. And actually recognizing the amount of data you're getting day to day on what's going on from your logs, and understanding and the adjustment. I mean, it's all about control and communication, and adapting to the actual threats out there. So if you integrate the assurance process, I mean, you've only got assurance when you know that you're actually adapting, because that assurance, tick in the box, great, we're there. Well, it's changed. Okay, that was tea time yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, it's that dynamic nature of it, as Vessalin said. We've got some comments here. We've got Tendai saying security by design is the best. I agree. Challenge with assurance and pen test is predefined scope and over a period of time. James, hi James. The future is logs as audit evidence, the DevSecOps way, with a little smile there. I mean, what I was wondering on this what's changed, if anything, recently? Because I'm thinking adaptation, digital transformation, adaptation to the cloud, hybrid working, the threats are changing. I just wonder what the panel's thoughts were on that. What's changed? Maybe if we go to Dr. Vesalen first, what do you think's changed recently in this whole assurance and sort of looking at those control gaps things? The environment's different now, right?
Yeah. Well, I think overall, I mean, there are improvements, but overall things are getting more complex with time. I mean, we see we introduce new controls or revise existing controls, standard change, others get retired. So this is a constantly changing environment. And when I talk to my colleagues, from different companies, so overall we face the same issue, increased need to make sure, our environment is secure, increased need for new tools or updated tools. At the same time, the overall issues remain the same. If you look into the reports of the successful attacks in the past years, we see overall the same trends. Humans get compromised most of the time from the malware. It's usually ransomware, 50% of the cases. So we see that the intensity is changing. So we have the same issues, but the intensity much quicker. So advanced persistent threat actors compromise much quicker than before. Malware changes how it's written. Now, as we can see from the article today, malware is changed not because it's not effective, not effective reaching its targets, but actually because they need to be adjusted to make even more profits to the criminals. So what I have seen in the latest reports is really the intensity changes, but the major causes, the major issues remain the same. So we have vulnerable systems, unpatched systems, misconfigurations. We have users still, clicking on the malicious link or, opening the malicious attachments. So some things remain the same.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I had a question about configuration that I thought maybe if I go to Fritz now about this one and then come back to Danny on the general topic. But I just wonder, and we certainly hear it on the show a lot on teissTalk, whether with all the new technology and the new sort of architecture, the new stacks that everyone's bringing all this new stuff in, whether configuration and maintenance activities have been up to the mark. I mean, when we look at some of the breaches and things, I just wonder whether, given the amount of additions most firms have deployed, whether that's given enough attention.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I think it's slowly changing. Yeah, there's been some new toolings, for example, from an AWS perspective. There's a new tool, fairly recent, I mean, maybe a year or so, called Control Tower that deals specifically with the issue of misconfiguration. So the industry is realizing that. And then what that tool does, it allows you to put some guardrails in place to prevent people from, setting up an S3 bucket that is open to the internet without the proper control. So you could put some guardrails and some control. So I think, but again, I've not seen that in many other cloud platforms. So I think the concept is out there. The people realize that it is an issue, but I think, for example, I don't know everything. So it could be that Azure has something, but I'm not aware of Azure having a similar type control tool against misconfiguration. But one more item I wanted to mention on the panel, on the question, I saw an interesting thing. People often, or in my opinion, tend to confuse security assurance and things like pen testing or vulnerability scans, which is more around vulnerability management, in my opinion. Because a pen test, even though it's done by a third party, a pen test is really a point of time, and it allows you to. So, again, I would like to differentiate between pen testing, vulnerability management, code scanning, dynamic static scan, and security assurance. Security assurance is having a third party or internally come in and evaluate the maturity of your security control, the tools that you come to bear, and then the auditability of those items. So again, a major difference, and I think it's important because you don't approach the two the same. Assurance is okay once a year or once every 3 years. Vulnerability management needs to be ongoing, needs to be continuous. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think, Danny, sometimes it comes from the academic kind of definition of assurance. There's like 5 steps, isn't it? I mean, I think that's where the confusion might
Yeah, yeah. No, I have a lot of problems with the idea of maturity levels. I mean, yeah, they're useful and important, but generally they are looking at the kind of the organizational side of stuff. And really, what they're saying is, yes, you as an organization, or maybe wider, if you can do it that way, that you look at the supply chain, perhaps that that supply chain is getting quite mature, and we have to understand the maturity of people coming into that and growing. But the problem is it's just talking about kind of it's just like capability. And so it's saying, yes, you've got the capability to do things maturely. It isn't actually saying, securely. It isn't actually saying whether you're actually doing things securely at the time, whether you've got the configuration right. And configuration, I mean, there are several conversations to be had, between different parts of the supply chain, different parts of the organization, particularly between the, the technical delivery teams who will kind of plug the bits together, and the people who need to get their work done. I mean, just the very fact, I was amazed that we're actually using the word configuration anyway, because my teeth are still rattling, because I was on one of my breakfast time appearances. I used the word configuration, and the look I got from Naga Manchetti for getting technical almost blew me off the couch.
Oh no, you can't do that. You can't upset Naga. We love Naga.
No,
you can't do that.
I was make it up with her.
I just felt though that it, for me, it's just it's so much has changed. That acceleration that we saw to hybrid of the pandemic. It's just it's all those back doors and things that I just wonder if it's even a function of, the amount of people, the resources, whether we're closing them properly. That's really where I was coming from. But I do think we do still see attacks facilitated by redundant accounts, superfluous comms interfaces. That was really my point. I would just wonder whether this whole area has just got more complex because of that, just because everything seems to have changed so rapidly, so quickly. Maybe go to the doctor first, Dr. Versailles. What do you think about that?
Which all these things, there's so many topics just discussed. I mean, we have so many tools that help us with security assurance. We mentioned this third-party risk management. So what Danny mentioned, and it's extremely important. I've seen this, especially depending on what kind of business a company is. So it's extremely important that in the beginning, before signing any contract with the company, that this is properly vetted. The specific processes. We have self-assessments in place that we can check the security posture of these companies and the actual security within the products, because once the decision is done, to acquire a specific program, then I have seen in my practice there are big problems. We might see, a very large company having specific software for specific industry that has an outdated component. So let's say MD5 checks for how they store their password. So it's something, you'd consider, it's, doesn't exist anymore, but you'll be surprised, depending on the industry you're within, depending on the, limited amount of products offerings for the specific industry, you might have to inevitably deal with vulnerable products. I think one of the best cases in this situation is just isolate the system as much as possible, because you already anticipate that this is going to come vulnerable, and you are not going to be able to manage, to properly secure that system without isolating it from the rest of the network. So, I mean, third-party risk assessment, extremely important. Other things we should not confuse with, like risk assessment, maturity assessment, completely different type of assessment that have a particular goal and need to be differentiated one another.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to what Fritz was saying, doesn't it? I mean, we've got some good comments coming up on this whole area. Obviously, a lot of our teissTalkers are involved in this all the time. We've got James saying, in the last 40 major incidents I've worked on, 50% were stolen credentials and 50% were 0-day in an internet-facing service. And Tendai say most auditors, this is interesting, Fitz, most auditors will not have a position to audit and give such assurance. Controls might be there and given a thumbs up, but when things happen with the clean assurance report, the board isn't going to be happy. There's a good, it's true. It's true. I think he's got a good point. Mark, assurance is a control MOT. You can only appraise the control at the time of audit, and its effectiveness may alter after you've left. So thank you for all those comments. Keep them coming, folks. And don't forget to vote in our poll as to whether you want a teissTalk mug or a teissTalk dinosaur. I'm not saying dinosaurs are available. They may only be available at our live event in London on September the 8th with both me and Jeff White, chairing various panels of teissTalk topics that you will love. So don't forget the teissTalk live event. Let's have a look. Do you know what? It struck me, Danny, when you were saying some stuff then. It still takes us back to basics all the time. And I think this is what Vesalem was saying as well. It takes me back to thinking about things like stakeholders, who own, assets and who owns that asset, zero trust and whether we remove it. It seems to take me back. It's always such a hard thing to get hold of when we look at those things, isn't it? Of knowing what we've got, knowing who owns it, and knowing if we're adequately protecting it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's not just a case of knowing what we've got and what we're doing. It's also a case of being honest when we find that there is actually a problem. Look at Cyber Essentials. Cyber Essentials has been established as somewhere where to get started. And it's been established as something which is applicable to the garages and the hairdressers, the chippies in Rotherham, the small businesses, but also the corporate organisations, who of course have far greater technology estates and far more complicated and complex business processes than those small businesses as well. So our challenge is really getting people just to admit, particularly in those corporates, that if they are not carrying out the researched and established good practices, which are defined by something like Cyber Essentials, that there is risk, that there is a problem there. At least be honest. Of course, one of the problems is here am I sort of arguing with people who I'm on the same side of. We're discussing here. I mean, it's good that that Vesalem and Fritz and you and me, that we're not all agreeing. But the problem is that people who to try and protect our information assets, or more importantly, the people on the receiving end, or the people who need to benefit from those information assets, probably spend more time arguing over what we should call it and trying to get a acronym for the project than we do actually, just getting on. And of course, the criminals just essentially kind of walk onto our systems because they don't stop to work out a nice exciting name for their heist.
Yeah.
Fritz, what do you think about that? I saw you nodding away there.
No, I totally agree. As an information professional, we often don't agree on the approach or the proper sort of methodology. There's multiple things. You could go ISO 27001, for example, as an insurance, or you could go SOC 2 Type 2, or you could go NIST. And different part of the world, like in North America, for example, SOC 2 Type 2 is the gold standard in regard to security assurance. And the rest of the world seems to be ISO 27001. That may not be true, but Danny could confirm. But at the end of the day is, as an information professional, there's a few core concepts that we all agree on. First, identity and access management and how you control that is key, regardless of what you call it and how it does. Whether you call it a sexy zero day or zero trust or whatever you call it, identity and access management is the access to your home, is your front and back door. You need to have proper control around that. So there's fee is going back again, Jenny, to that concept of back to the basic seems to work. You go back to your basic, make sure your things, and you start again on another cycle. So that's my
I know that you wanted to bring in a point about measurement here,
Mhm.
Veselin, didn't you? I mean, that's very important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we mentioned ISO 27001, for instance. So that's also my perception. Most of the companies in Europe, pursue this particular standard. This is one of the many standards, but it specifically defines that companies should measure the performance of the information security management system. And depending on the individual goals the company defines, we can talk about integrity, availability, confidentiality, and other goals, but we can talk about very specific things, like security awareness. For the company, security awareness might be the highest goal, or meeting the compliance objectives. So this could be one additional goal. And we definitely want to make sure that we perform good. And in order to perform good, we have to measure by following, this particular standard. But of course, the other standards we can follow. We make sure that we are on the right way. So yeah, if we chose ISO 27001, you have to measure, in the beginning, the very basic things, and later more things if possible.
No, absolutely. I think it brings us to a question, I suppose, because I'm wondering about the best mix of sort of policies and training with applying the controls that we've got, given the standards that we're talking about, given those measurements. Is there a best way to balance them, or is that all a function of maturity of the organization? Is it always individual, do we think? Anyone?
I will jump in, because it's very interesting that you put that mix in, because I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that we only ever seem to be able to deal with one of these problems at a time. Okay, I know we're brought up what I call the spectre of awareness. Okay, I'm not saying awareness is important. I'm not saying that it's not important.
No.
But it's and everyone's going, oh, awareness and phishing and all of that kind of stuff. Well, actually, if you are going to protect the company from phishing, well, firstly, segmented attacks. Some things are going to get through. So it would be nice if it didn't blow the entire organization out of the electronic water. So at least like a segment. Let's have better filtering of an active monitoring of what's coming in. So you adjust that filtering. So so you've got your allow lists and your block lists, and the checking that these things are up to date and they're being effective. Now that kind of existence, that kind of situation, that understanding, that's what assurance should be now, not looking behind to see if we got the configuration right last week. It's kind of obviously, you install and you test, but you need that combination. So when it comes down to it, actually this big awareness and people side of stuff is probably the very, very last resort, because we probably haven't designed our systems well in the first place. If we're relying on Dresner, who's been marking all day, not to click on something which they've obviously been able to fish, because let's face it, put a URL with Doctor Who on and I'm away.
So we've got a comment here that kind of pertains to all of this. It says, it's from Stephen. It says, so rather than the MOT type assurance process where controls are seen as valid at a point of time, it sounds like some companies need some form of real-time controls monitoring, but again, that's going to be prohibitively expensive for many companies. Fritz, what do you think about that? Because that's what we're saying, isn't it? He's right. But right. I do think it's expensive. I mean, Danny's mentioned IASME there and Essentials.
Yeah,
the answer is
it can be expensive for sure, but I think what I've found in my experience and other organization I work with is there's multiple tools. It seems to be because security was not taught by design. So what you have is a patchwork of tools that were brought on board to do a particular aspect of a security control. So what you end up having is 10, 15 security tools that are all overlapping in some way. And of course, that is expensive. But I think with a truly security by design sort of approach, you can really optimize that cost by picking a tool that will get you 90% of the way,
Yeah.
and then the other one, the other 10%, you mitigate some other way. So I think the cost is a factor of poor optimization of resources rather than,
I think that's true.
yeah, because I've found tools like security awareness platform, like, obviously Danny's favorite topic. uh, I found one that was, less than $25 per employee. um, and it works brilliantly, and it doesn't, and I don't, it's shoot and forget, and that aspect is covered, right? But
I suppose, and a lot of them are left kind of stagnant on platforms, and they've ticked a compliance box, and no one's really checking if anyone's using them or absorbing them. And I wonder if that just leads us to kind of the final point that was on our kind of points to discuss today. And I'm going to go to Vasalin first about it, because the question really was, can we move to a more proactive stance on this? And I think we've answered it today. Can we go from being, reactive security to proactively anticipating everything that's going to hit us, or certainly most of what's going to hit us? What would you say was best practice there? Do you think we can do that? Can we go from reactive to proactive? Do you think we're already doing that as an industry mostly?
I don't think we're doing this, mostly because of limited resources, but also maybe not focusing on the right things. So the question maybe should be asked, what are the tools that we need to optimize our processes? And the first things I have in mind about this is automation. So try to automate as soon as possible. So if you follow a particular standard that ISO 27001, it's going to be very complicated to maintain compliance. And compliance is one of security goals. Itself alone, it's not integrity, availability, confidentiality, privacy, accountability, etc. It's compliance, and that takes so much resources to maintain if we don't use the right resources. And the next thing I think of, it's, auditing is a great tool, but it's not the only thing we should have, because it's basically a snapshot. So you do one time a year, or, depending on your needs, maybe frequently or less frequently. But at the same time, we need to embrace a risk culture. So we need a massive security awareness, security training for employees, so that they can proactively report about opportunities for improvement, current deficiency, make sure that they have the right tools so they can easy click on report on any opportunity for improvement. So these are kind of a thing. So automation, make sure employees have a good security culture and continuously improve the security culture. And of course, from organizational perspective, I think about, the classical approach is, organizations should do risk assessment, and that should do maturity assessment, and they should continuously, perform this type of assessment so that they know where to dedicate limited resources, because, we're going to have a huge list with risks, but we're never going to mitigate them to a reasonable level. Having said this, I'm thinking about, the 18 CIS critical security controls. It's an interesting concept. I mean, it's a security baseline that's basically is derived from, based on information obtained from true cyber attacks. So basically, the analysts, they looked into, what are the most common attacks, what compromise the systems, and they designed 18 groups of security controls to help organization, like a one-size-fits-all approach, to help them with. So overall, my idea is we should focus on the right things, make sure you have a proper risk assessment, if needed, perform also maturity assessment, know what the difference is, look into this, this baselines like the CIS 18 control groups, and increase risk culture.
Yeah, I mean, that for me is pretty comprehensive, Danny, on how to move from that towards that more proactive stance. I just wondered.
Jenny, you're doing a naga on me here. You're trying to make me choose and come up with one absolute. We need both reactive and both.
Okay, true.
As well. These things need to go together. And they need to, the point of the standards, or I think the point of the standards, is that they should be fully adaptable, and they can be, with the right attitude, to the situation that you actually bring them to. So you look at the situation, are you looking after medical systems, power systems, the accounts at the greengrocers? That is going to change. So I nearly fell over because you used the C word before, compliance. I don't know what C word you were thinking about. And people think that compliance is, and this is the cliche. This is what we always used to say in quality management. When ISO 9001 became the big craze, going back all of those years. Actually, it was 5750 when I started. I know I don't look that age. Strange, interesting fact that the year that I started in that was actually the Jewish year 5750, but we won't go into numerology there. But no, none of these things are destinations. These are constant journeys, and it's being able to keep up in the same way that we want our businesses to keep up with the markets. We need to keep up with the threats, and perhaps see it as something more positive. That actually, we want to achieve. We want to find what we can do to improve the risk of success, rather than we still talking about all of this risk as a negative thing. I mean, that's what we do at the Cyber Foundry. This is the idea of growing business through cyber, rather than, oh my God, we've got to have all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt and scare you into doing something.
Embrace the risk, Fritz.
Embrace it. You have no choice. We have no choice but to embrace it. I think the way to proactiveness is, I think, foundationally resource driven, right? So if you have the right resource, then you dedicate a portion of your team. As a CISO, I will dedicate a portion of the team to look at, okay, what is happening? What are the 0 days? What is coming out of CISA, or what are some of those notifications? So talking to others in the media industry, what are they observing is the attack of the week, that sort of thing. So that proactiveness does take time, has some value, but if you don't have resources, if you're only one person and you're busy hand to keyboard fixing, a vulnerability scan, then that's a problem. So yes, it is possible. You need to be both, but do you have the resources to get it done?
Absolutely. Well, look, this is a discussion that's going to go on and on. Obviously, there's a certain amount of tailoring and a certain amount of baseline standard that we all need to look at in this particular area. I've got just a couple more comments before we have a look at our poll, which I think we all know what the poll is going to say, but just a couple more comments. We've got Steve saying a lot of this is about spending time to work out what could happen, what we care about most, and putting appropriate controls in place, as well as just say quick hi to Daniela, who joined us a bit late, and to Robin. Steve also saying we definitely need to move as an industry away from the FUD and become the people that say yes if you do it like this, rather than the traditional no, that's not secure. And for that, Steve, you win either the dinosaur or the mug. If we could have a quick look at our poll, and let's see whether our teissTalkers would there's a surprise. Most people would rather have a teissTalk dinosaur rather than a mug. Steve, we will get you a teissTalk dinosaur or a mug if you let us know which one. We will let you know which one it is. And don't forget to join me on Tuesday when I'm talking about instant response for Tuesday's teissTalk. But for today, I'd like to say thank you very much to my brilliant panel to talk to us about security assurance and to cheer us up about it. It wasn't dry in the end. I was very worried that it would be, but you've been so wonderful. So a very big thank you to Professor Danny Dresner, to Dr. Veselin Monev, and to Fritz Jean-Louis for being a brilliant panel on today's teissTalk. I want to say thank you to all my fabulous teissTalkers, my Thursday teissTalkers this week. And I do think that the best, there's been lots of dinosaur names, and I think we're going to keep it going. But today, there was one from Lee, which was mega amount of logs are done, which I think is pretty good. So for now, and until we give him a better name, I think that's what we're going to call him. But for this week, don't forget, next Tuesday, it's me again at 4:00, and we will be talking about instant response. And don't forget, teissTalk Live, September the 8th. You can, I think, book your tickets already now. That's in London with me and Jeff White. But for now, thanks to the Teiss Hunters and to all the team, and thanks to you, the teissTalk audience. That's all from us. Thank you again, and goodbye.
Bye.